What's up, y'all? It's Shuffle, and if you're a Darkest Dungeon 2 player that doesn't play on the experimental branch, you probably logged into the game a day or two ago and noticed that a lot of stuff has changed. So we're going to break down the whole thing in case you haven't been watching the other videos that I have, and I'll talk about the format for dissecting this update. If you are unaware, on the last set of patches over about the last 6 weeks, it was called the Steadfast Stewards update, and what they were doing was they're trying to polish up the game, go back to a lot of things that got neglected and fell by the wayside, and they're doing their best to rebalance the heroes in a timely fashion. So far, we have 3 out of 5. With that going on, if you haven't played experimental, where you get to ease into all the changes because they kept coming a little bit each week, and you just played on live or retail, then you're logging in and a bunch of stuff is different. And some of it sounds more intensive than it is, and some of it's not. And I guess that's the same thing, but yeah. So we'll talk about the major changes in this video. So thankfully, Wagner and the wiki team has our back, and they had this nice little section already written out. So I'll go over it, I'll break it down for you, give some insight, and as far as the heroes go, we got Occultist reworked technically a second time. Runaway got fully reworked, and so did Plague Doctors. So each of those heroes are going to be separate guides that I'm going to be making this week to the best of my ability. But for this one, as I said, we're going to talk about weak token, just looking at this list, memories, modifiers, ordainments, some enemy stuff, the dam specifically, and then whichever items aren't really the trinkets. So, stay tuned. Hope you enjoy it. Now, the first major change are weak tokens. And weak tokens already said that in the game, where I can see if I can bring it up real quick, but it always said like minus 50% damage. Let's see if I can bring them up right here. I can. All right. So it used to say next attack deals minus 50% damage, which most of us thought meant half, but actually the way it worked was an additive property. I'm not trying to jump scare anyone with math, but as an additive property compared to a multiplicative property, it made weaken not actually deal half damage as one would think, and it led to some weird interactions. For instance, an enemy with Ordainment, this is always the best example, that would hit you for 10, normally got a 40% damage boost, which meant 10 plus 40% is 14, right? Easy to follow. And if you had a weak token, you would think that having that would make it go down to 7, because that's what the little crossed out text is supposed to be, and it wasn't. Instead, it would go down to 9. The reason it worked that way was because it would take the plus 40% damage from the weak token and the minus 50% or from Ordainment, and then the minus 50% damage from the weak token, and add those together, and it would become minus 10%. So instead of 14 becoming 7, or down to 5 going up by 40%, which still would be about 7, instead you got minus 10% damage on a 10 damage hit, and it would go down to 9. And there have been several discussions surrounding it, whether it's the DLL file or if it's just a pop text error and whatnot, but Red Hook has made the decision to make it so weak tokens are at the end of all of the math. So all your math in the middle with your damage modifiers, and then outside it's times 0.5, which means it cuts it in half at the very end, which means weak tokens actually feel more intuitive and do what you would assume they would, which is you deal half damage on hit. It seems like a big deal at first, but it's honestly not, just because in the long term, you know, it only affects a couple points of damage a lot of the time, but specifically it's just really nice to deal with enemy Ordainment, because The way weak tokens operated before is they would, in my opinion, just assume everything's in my opinion, right? So no one gets their, I don't know, their boots untied. And with it being that way, since the enemy always had static bonus damage from Ordainment, weak tokens always hit the player in most cases for full effectiveness. The percentage damage bonus that players got weren't too common. There's some quirks, there were some trinkets, a couple paths, things floating around that gave percentage damage. And I think this change really helps the player the most. So, something I was looking forward to. They tried it, enough people liked it, and it stuck. As a reaction to that, a lot of concern was raised over the application of weak tokens now because it actually became stronger. And for most of the changes that Red Hook put in to compensate, they're all enemy focused right now. Things may change later, especially with like Hellion and Barbaric Yop coming up for rework, but right now everything is focused on the enemies. So I really personally don't feel that a lot of these are, for one, that impactful where you had to change it, and then two, it feels almost like it feels like overcompensating. And not that that's entirely awful, but this is something Red Hook's done before where like a change comes in, they get feedback, pushback, whatever, and then they try and readjust it, but usually it overcompensates and then it works backwards a little bit till it finds where it's supposed to be. The one I do agree with out of this whole list, because Cherub doing 1 weak token kind of defeats the purpose. Cherub's supposed to be annoying but not threatening. Hemic Rot 10 to 15 is not that big of a deal. Death's Door giving 1 weak token instead of 2 is like okay. But the big one is the Beastmen with the axes, the throwing axes. Those going from 100 to 50% chance is just a good balance change. It doesn't matter if weaken was additive or multiplicative before. It's just nice that you don't get hit by a weak token every single time they do something, because this move, Splitting Edge Stalker's Reach, can crit for like 25. It can hit pretty hard. And so being able to not get saddled with endless weak tokens as they sit there and put a bunch of riposte on the other guys, so it makes it very hard to actually defeat them. This is a good change. Memories. This was a big topic of discussion. Some memories were mostly not good, and a couple were like really strong, such as Favorite Toy, which just gave you bonus 1 damage to each dot type. And so after discussing with Eric in the Darkest Dungeon Discord, him and all the people participating and testing and all that, eventually it came down to this. So you can reroll memories, which is pretty nice. I think the lowest cost is 4, if I remember correctly. And it's the final unlock in the altar. You can see it at the very top. I guess I could show it real quick. But if you're in the altar, it's right here. It's the very last one. Thankfully I didn't put my camera up there, so right there. You can see the rerolls are 4. And some of these change, like Favorite Toy. Instead of just being flat bonus damage, you have to have a related item equipped, and I think that's perfectly fine. A little more thematic, more fun. And someone, I forget who, I apologize, but someone said that it makes sense that your favorite toy, might have been a little glimmer of hope or whatever. I guess a flaming bottle would be more accurate, but, it makes more sense now. And I dig this change. But with that also came some other memory changes. Reroll gives you 3 new choices, plus the one you already had equipped, in case you want to keep it. And reroll never picks duplicates. Memory heroes can now be renamed. Fantastic. It kind of takes all of the theming out of the memories, but honestly, people like to just rename heroes from time to time, and being stuck with, John's sword for your leper for 6 months because he doesn't die is cool, but you may want to name him something else eventually. And so the other ones that have changed, Second Chance instead of 5 Death Blow Resist, Now heals 10% when you hit Death's Door once per region. This one has been pretty clutch, especially because Death Blow Resist is a myth. I'm joking. Summer's Day replaced 15% travel healing with 10 resolute chance, much better. Replace 10 positive banter, which means just chance for pips, with 10% healing given. This is a big improvement. This is a very good one for your healers. Long Day's Work replaced combat start -1 stress with 10 debuff res piercing. Awesome. Fresh Bread, 5% max HP buff if you eat food. So it'd be like an extra 5%. Now lasts until the end of the expedition. So I can't remember if that stacks or not. I want to say it does. But either way, you still get bonus HP, which is nice. Lucky Break replaced combat start dodge with gain when dodging -1 stress. Really good for your dodge characters. Father's Praise replaced combat start block with plus regen dealt, +1 regen. So that's Runaway, Flagellant, the new Plague Doctor, Occultist has regen now, Vestal, of course, Crusader, that's 6 out of 15 already. I want to say Abomination can regenerate too. So we're looking at almost half the cast can regenerate. So it's actually a more useful memory than you would think. But this is definitely best for Vestal. Just drop Divine Comfort and it's just an extra point. That's really powerful. A lesson learned memory, crit increase from 3 to 5. Small change, but worth it. Long recovery memory, disease resist increase from 15 to 25%. Favorite toy now has the condition. So all in all, this was a nice set of changes. Now you're not fishing for like a couple memories and getting disappointed when you don't get them. Like favorite toy, but some of the other ones still remain, like plus 10% damage, +1 speed. Those are both really good. They're still in the game. Battle modifiers, the existing ones got reworked and the new ones added do some cool stuff. And thankfully, they're starting to take away some speed from the enemies because they were just way too fast before. So Elite lost 1 speed. It's still plus 20% damage and 20% HP. Frenzied enemies, instead of flat bonus damage, combat start strength token, gain 1 hit, chance a strength token. And I really like this one because tokens are interactive where static buffs are not. So having the enemy get a token that you can interact with, that you can plan around, look out for, I think is really nice. And then there's an element of randomness in there that can kind of spike out mid-fight and be dangerous. So I thought that was great. Hail enemies remove debuff res, that should never have been there, which is nice, and then they moved it to impervious, which is okay. Hasten enemies no longer 4 speed, down to 2. So what happened before is with Ordainment giving +2 speed and hasten, if you happen to roll that combination, the enemies would have +6 speed on you, meaning the foot soldier from the Tangle that has 1 speed could end up outspeeding your entire team. Kinda whack. So that's gone. Pervious enemies reduced the stun buff, and then added the debuff res from Hail. Sturdy replaced the flat HP with combat start block. This actually kind of screwed me up when I was streaming yesterday, so don't think that some of these aren't impactful. Here are the new ones added. Entropic enemies, chance to add a random token at turn end. That's like the Trinket True Entropy, which did that, added random tokens. So the enemies get that. Prowling enemies, combat start, 1 enemy gains stealth tokens. They get 2 of them, and then they get bonus crit when stealth. This is pretty dangerous. This almost ganked me in a fight that I was doing again on stream. Vengeful enemies, ally death, add positive token. That's, another kind of scary one. You kill something, or if there's summons that keep happening, like, oh man, that's gonna be really bad in the Shambler fight, or a Collector. Yeah. So those things can happen. Intimidating enemies apply on crits, add a weak token, a vuln, or knockback 1, and then this one blew me up pretty hard and I wasn't ready for it, and that was Dormant. Combat start, 1 enemy has a chance to be dazed. Actually, I guess all enemies have a chance to be dazed by 33%, and whoever is last in turn order at the start of their turn gets a crit token. And I think this one, again, this blew me up pretty hard. But also, I like the way this is done because it's not round start where you have to, you know, answer it immediately. It's more, since it's on turn start, it's something that you have to be paying attention to. So you get rewarded for understanding the turn order, looking at the bar. And even though the last enemy gets a crit token, if you can single out what that last enemy is going to be during the fight, then you can snipe it before it gets the crit token. However, you got to make sure that the other enemies have gone, because if you kill the fourth one, the third one's going to get it instead because there's no one else, if they still have an action. So the new modifiers are fun, and there's a lot of numbers here with Ordainment. The biggest things that changed were enemies lost their dot res piercing because ordained enemies had plus 10%. The average resist of a hero per damage over time effect in this game is around 30. You consider the entire cast, some have 40, some have even 50 for like Blight. But when you come down on the bottom end, there's some like, you know, 20s, and I think Leper's like 10. And so having plus 10% res piercing was really dangerous, and they took that out. But there's still the one extra turn of dot duration, so you have a bigger chance to resist it. Each region now has scaling stats for Ordainment on the enemies. Denial caps at 20% HP damage. Resentment caps at 30. And then Acts 3, 4, and 5 cap at 40 like it used to. Acts 2, 4, and 5. And there might have been one other thing that I'm not remembering, but it says several confession-specific buffs have been updated. It's these that I remember. I don't think anything else really changed, but it's definitely these, where they have new effects that are not just random dot chance, because that surprisingly was still kind of dangerous. That would gank you, because enemies that don't have damage over time would actually get access to it. So yeah, as I said, right, Acts 1 and 3 have not changed, but Act 2 buff has changed from apply on 1 burn hit to round end, gain apply on hit 3 burn when self HP is max. That is a nice change because it is mirroring the boss mechanic, and I thought that was really cool. So the enemies that are ordained get something more thematic and interesting to play around. Ambition, no more random bleed and vulnerable chance. Instead, they convert tokens and flip them to other tokens. So you can get things that are possibly not that strong for the enemy at the time, like block plus, and then it can go to strength. Or if you have dodge plus, it can go to crit. So there's some cool things that can happen there. And again, tokens are interactive, so it's a nice change. Cowardice specific buffs have changed to round start, gain 10 crit and vuln 5% of the time. So this is, wait, no, it changed from this. Yeah, because it had this as well. And then it changed to, on critical hit, invert a positive token and apply to attacker when hit, when crit 1 blight. So a little more threatening and very cool. Exemplar will always be ordained in confessions. No more lucking out with unordained Exemplar, where he was way easier to deal with. So now he's like full power the whole time. Now, as I said, I don't want to go into the heroes all the way, because those are the next video topics. I want to keep this relatively brief, you know, for what I'm going for. And so we're going to avoid the big three at the bottom, but let's check out what these other ones have. So Bounty Hunter, they changed a few characters where you don't consume combo if the effect can't trigger, if that makes sense. So for Bounty Hunter, Hurlbat, which is the axe throw, will ignore dodge if the enemy has combo. But now, instead of consuming it without dodge, because that's what it did, it just doesn't. So your combo token can be used for something else, which is nice. Duelist just got a tooltip fix, and overall, Red Hook has been working to fix what the tooltips look like, so the text is going to look a little bit different. Flagellant sepsis damage went up on Exanimate and Scourge, and this extraneous duration text from Toxic Token, I'm not quite sure what that refers to. I didn't play a lot of Scourge, but I know that Toxic was more of a ramping thing for it. The reason these are getting changed here is because critical hits no longer increase damage over time duration, which is a huge deal. And so you're going to see things like some damage over time may go up or get other effects to compensate the fact that it can no longer crit and get plus 50% duration. This goes for heroes and enemies, and that change impacts heroes more than it does enemies. I would say because enemies still get the bonus duration from being ordained, and the enemy damage over time damage overall has been pretty high historically. And there were some offenders in the hero kits like Plague Grenade and what's another one? Firefly. And so those kind of got nerfed, but this change impacted like all of the other stuff too, which is a bit unfortunate. So now all your damage over time critical hits do is you have a chance of removing stress, and you get 20% penetration against their resist. So no more duration. But because of that, now we get different effects on skills, like you'll see with Runaway later, and Flagellant had to get a sepsis damage increase. Grave Robber, same thing, no longer consumes the combo token if she has a crit token, because it would do that before. And it would do the same thing with Occultist, where he got a guaranteed crit on his heal for having 2 unchecked power tokens. If he had a crit token as well, it took both. And that was frustrating. So double tap plus on Sharp Shot, not showing that it applied combo, so they cleaned up that tooltip, thankfully. And as I said, Occultist went through a lot of changes, so I'm not looking at these hero ones this second. And those are the last ones. I'll jump to the enemies. Champion enemies are now called champions, which is cool. Librarian is no longer burn immune. It has 100% burn resist, which you can get past now. So linseed oil, critical hits, that'll get you through. So Runaway's not entirely dead weight in that fight. Collector, lifesteal has a 1-turn cooldown, so no more lifesteal spam. And this was a bug. I don't know if it came in the Steadfast Stewards update, the supdate as it's called. But yeah, death could spawn in repair fights, and I think that's gone. Focus Fault, no longer percentage damage, first scene tokens, plus 8 damage instead. After killing the Gaunt Chirurgeon, the Surgeon, however you want to say it, patients are now found in Gaunt Road battles for 3 regions, and it needs to be 3 for Kingdoms, but in 3 for Confessions, that's pretty much the entire run. It seems a small change, and I think they toned down their disease output, and as I said, it seems like a small change, but it's actually pretty fun, because it feels like your choices are impacting the world just a little bit, and that's a bit more immersive, and it's nice to see that. Spike barricades and weapon racks no longer gain positives. I think something ended up happening where they could like gain stealth tokens from the modifier where they get stealth or something like that, and that was just really irritating, you know? What else happened? Military Mash has been updated, so they added stuff, and I think if you kill the Warlord or kill enough military, then we'll have it so other enemies will use the military barricades, like the Pillagers. Spearmen can now hit rank 3 or 4 if you have combo, which is great. Now your front line doesn't get melted the entire fight. Warlord Paro applies horror, so they're buffing Warlord. Yeah, after killing Warlord, other factions can be found in the military road battles for 3 regions. Crypt Keeper more common in the Catacombs if you have the A-Bomb DLC. And since Ordainment lost speed, they're increasing some enemy speed to kind of even it out. So Widow's faster, Sacrificial's faster. Flayer, like all the Sprawl enemies for the most part, except for, I guess not all of them. Like Shaman, Immolatus, they don't get it, but the other ones got a little bit of speed. Librarian got some speed as well. The Dam. This is a new confession. Yeah, altar in your confessions game mode. Your altar now has a place called the Dam, which is down here. The Dam is I'm hoping going to keep getting more modifiers like this, and it's supposed to let you fine-tune your experience to make it easier or just more enjoyable or even harder. Enabling retreat. Right now, retreat in Confessions is kind of costly. You get hit with 2 loathing and some other stuff for doing it. So you really just want to retreat only if you have to. But it's still a 66% chance. I wish they made it 100 if they're going to do it this way, but that's a thing. Enable hoarder selling. This is something people have asked for since the start of the game in 2021. And I used to be against this myself, but now having seen it in Kingdoms, I thought it was pretty cool. And then they tried it in Confessions, and it works pretty good in Confessions. So now if you have trinkets that you don't want, it's worth holding onto them because they're worth something instead of just tossing them out, you know? And so you can take your trinkets that you don't want to the hoarder, and you can sell them for like 2, 4, or 8 baubles. Which means if you have a bunch of trinkets you don't want, you can hold on to them and maybe buy something that you do want. Enable the mountain at all inns, so whenever you go to an inn, the mountain's there. So in Denial, I think you can just skip straight to it, or if you're in the other acts where you need a trophy, you have to get a trophy first, but then you can go straight to the mountain. Which helps speed up runs, but also makes it so you can kind of challenge yourself. If you think that your team is just really strong and you don't need another region or 2 even to power up, you can just go straight to the mountain and see how it goes. Increased chance of battle modifiers, just to make the game a bit harder. Some items and trinkets got changed, so some combat items got tags, like new tags, such as the spring water, if I can find it. But yeah, mineral-rich spring water is now a restorative, for example, and I was really hoping it would just pop up. Ah, combat items. No, right there. Okay, so where is the spring water? Just to give you an example. Right here. Okay. So yeah, now it's a restorative. They changed a few other ones. Linseed oil's flammable, which is pretty cool because it lowers burn resist, so it should be flammable, right, by definition. And besides a lot of the other items, like just a lot of tags, not too many changes, but the big ones are also the dark impulses got little icons so you can differentiate them, which is nice. And, you know, it's easier than just changing the art a little bit, so you can see you have a bleed resist, blight, burn, the debuff, disease, healing given, movement, stress, and stun. So now you can see all of them at a glance. You don't have to mouse over every single one of them. And is there any other major change here related to tokens? Or not tokens, trinkets and items and stuff. Okay, you can get fertile dirt in the sluice. They kind of lowered that, so now it's returning, which means you might get more bubbles out of the sluice, which is nice. And a lot of these got changed from things that say target hero to target ally, and that's mostly for kingdoms, because the militia aren't heroes, they're allies, and so being able to give them stuff and have it work is a nice change. Cat food price reduced to 4. Love this. I used the cat the other day. Very nice change. And Intoxicant has changed to no longer be like a huge Death Door debuff. Instead, it's removing weaken on use, Death Door resist for 5 turns, which is nice. And entering Death Door removes all weak, so. Interesting, good changes. Corrupted Bile Gland is a serrated tag, which I find odd myself. Because, well, I guess it has to have everything. Okay, that makes sense. Because before, it was just noxious, I believe, and I guess flammable, but now it's like all 3, so it can trigger your other trinkets like Favorite Toy, or your combo trinkets like how Poison Ring needs a noxious item, or Tinderbox needs a flammable serrated for Fishnet, for example, so a lot of cool stuff there. No, Fish Line, that's what it was. And is there any other major stuff here in the items section? Not too much. Oh, the mastery changes and speed. So something people wanted for a long time were speed modifiers, so a way to increase combat and driving speed. Both of those are in the game now. When I stream, I don't use the combat speed just because it's a little too disorienting for viewers. But I use the driving speed, and fantastic. I use combat speed when I play offline, fantastic. So it's really nice to have these in the game. You don't need any other modifiers. You don't have to enable edit or prefs. It's just there. It's in the game. Mastery went through some changes, and so they aren't all together, are they? No, they're here together. Okay. Yeah. Resistance nodes, now you get 50% instead of 37.5, and cultist nodes give you 60% chance on mastery. They were never 100. You may never have known the percentages, but that's what it was. And road fights went from 11% down to 8, so it got nerfed. But overall, this is a net gain in mastery, mathematically. So, a lot of cool stuff. If you take a lot of fights, you'll have plenty of mastery. What's also nice, too, is because people talk about getting up to, 20 or more mastery, like you can get some huge numbers now, just because it's more consistent. But what I want to remind people of, too, is that, yes, it is more consistent. However, now you don't have to go to every single fight because you're just starved on mastery. Now you can actually take other routes. You can go to studies. You can go to Oasis, because you're not fighting for mastery the whole time. Instead, you can do other things. And now combat nodes are, for the mastery, obviously, but also for lowering loathing. Node loathing still in the game. Couldn't get that out. I tried my hardest. This is a very big change, and it's, just kind of in here. Yeah, as I said before, crits no longer increase duration by 2 rounds for both enemies and heroes. And the reasoning is a more worded out version of what I said before. Basically, it was just a lot of extra damage and all that, so they just made it a little bit less. No more +3 mastery, region goal, fine. Wheel and armor tokens on your stagecoach now scale, so if you have 1, you get a small benefit, 2, you get a good benefit, 3, you get, guaranteed. And if you have those items that increase it by 2, so like the wheels and the extra armor plating, you don't have to be at 5 to get the full benefit. You can be 3 or more. So if you have 3, you get it. 4, you get it. 5, you get it. Get back down to 4, you still have it. Relics drop from resist and road battles while in the sluice. Always roll the max amount. That's good. So that's a nice extra region to go down to, or reason to go down to the sluice and get stuff. Removed ignore res from crit token description because it was redundant, I guess. The Death's Head trinkets, I forgot about this. They are randomized. And so I have some different ones on my other profile, but right up here with these Death's Heads, we have goofy stuff like this. Entering Death's Door, +2 stealth, -2 stress. Kill something, 2 stealth, not stress, sorry. Leaving Death's Door, bonus damage for the rest of the fight, some crit speed. This is insane on Flagellant. Absolutely insane. You can't hit them, you can't kill corpses to get these benefits, but there's some really cool ones that can happen. Like this! My goodness! Entering Death's Door, get some stealth, stress, leaving Death's Door, extra action, gain on killing blow region. That is insane. I like that. So you can have some fun stuff when you kill death now, and it's really nice. So it's more worth taking Flagellant. It's worth it trying, doing your best to beat that fight and all that. All right, we'll stop it there. That's the big info dump for a lot of the major stuff. And as I said before, I'll be doing hero guides over the next week, and I'll have the updated ones first. I think people said they wanted Plague Doctor the most when I asked the viewers. So we'll get Plague Doctor first, Runaway, I believe, second, and then Occultist third. Thanks for watching. Let me know what you're thinking down below in the comments. And if you're wondering about Leper and Hellion, those are going to come in September or later. So they're going to finish Kingdoms, the 3rd module with the Crimson Court. That's to be done in August. And then in September, they will start getting the other hero reworks out the door. So you don't have to wait too much longer. Now the video's over. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.